Okay, hopefully you can all see the screen. I want to share with you now some inspiring practices about life-friendly work measures. Basically, how can research and higher education organizations promote work-life balance? Um, I cannot see your faces, but I'm counting on you being able to see my screen. If not, please shout. So I will start here with measures of a general nature. This is organizational practices that are not restricted to academic environments, but that can still be of very good use for higher organization. So the first one is paid leave for to care for children, other family members, or to receive personal health care. And a couple of words of warning. We have to be very attentive here about how we define family in our policies. Who do we consider to be family? We have to pay attention not to restrict this benefit by heteronormative conceptualizations of family. So it is the case in some European countries that the state does not recognize the legality of any other partnership besides a married heterosexual couple. But in our institutions, in our policies, we can be more inclusive and we should be more inclusive. People in many different life situations can actually benefit from family-friendly policies and this kind of paid leave. And these policies are also important for men who are caregivers, for single parents, for employees in same-sex relationships, and for others whose lives do not reflect the traditional nuclear family that is often implied by the term family-friendly. We have to bear this in mind when we write policy. What kind of documentation we will ask from our employees to certify familial bonds? Because it will be the case that, for example, homosexual couples sometimes won't be able to provide a marriage certificate. Are we restricting our policy to married couples, or are we also taking unmarried ones into consideration? We can be flexible here. We can ask for other types of proof when people apply for a benefit of this sort. So as you can see, there are a lot of details that we have to be very careful about when we design policy if we don't want to exclude non-normative bodies or non-normative lifestyles from the benefits of our policies. The second measure is called reduced appointment, and it includes part-time jobs and job share appointments. Of a similar kind are measures that allow for flexible working and home office. These four options that I just mentioned can be very useful work-life balance tools. When somebody works part-time, they work a reduced amount of hours per week. When somebody does job share, it means that two people or more, but generally two people, are taking the exact same role. So working time and responsibilities are divided. Flexible working schedules means that somebody might work full-time, but not necessarily from 9 to 5. We know that it's not generally the case that researchers work from 9 to 5, but we have to be aware that there are many other people working in higher education and research institutions who are not academics, and they might benefit a lot from a policy of this sort. Home office, I believe, is self-explanatory by now. Somebody is given the possibility of working from home a certain amount of hours per week. All sorts of reduced appointment arrangements can be differentiated between reduced appointments for extraordinary reasons, for example, to care for a sick child, spouse, or partner, and reduced appointments for ordinary reasons, for example, to spend more time at home with young children or a short-term transition from maternity leave. What we need to be attentive here is the gendered take-up of these options in our organizations. If women are the only ones taking part-time jobs, doing job sharing, flexible working, or home office, then we will have a very much gender perception of policy usage that will lead to prejudices and marginalization. I will come back to this point later in the presentation when we discuss the paradoxes of work-life balance measures. Another type of measure refers to facilities in the building itself, such as lactation rooms, diaper changing stations, and day nurseries, and also lunchrooms, and I will talk about that later. We should try to make sure that our organizations are as family friendly as possible, also in terms of facilities. Having lactation rooms, for example, is a good start. Some mid-sized organizations also have a nursery or a creche or something of that sort to provide childcare during working hours. This is particularly important if at the national level, there is a gap between the end of parental leave and the state provision of childcare. Good quality and affordable childcare services need to be available at the end of parental leave if we are going to allow parents to return to work. In some countries, there is almost no gap. Let's say there's a parental leave that is 9 months long, and then the state provides free high quality childcare for babies of an age of 9 months. A lack of gaps between the end of leave provision and the start of state-supported childcare is linked to greater women's participation in the labor market. But in most countries, there is some sort of gap, in worst cases of years, and this is key that we as equality officers in our organizations do a thorough legal research on this and do our best attempt to cover such gaps. Otherwise, it is mostly women who pay the price by withdrawing from the labor market or reducing their working hours. This is a good example of what I meant in the first session on Monday about the mediating role that institutions can have and can play in terms of work-life balance. Of course, we cannot control external factors, what the state provides and what does not provide, but we can try to alleviate some of these gaps in the provisions. Another facility that proves useful is lunchrooms to rest. This is especially valuable for employees with chronic illnesses that need some breaks during the day to continue their working hours. Then another measure is related to care and disability subsidies. Some states have generous subsidies for families with children, elderly members who need care, and or have a disability. But some states do not, and this leaves many employees, especially women, at great disadvantage. There is room for policy intervention here at the side of the institution. It is also the case that sometimes there are disability subsidies from the side, on the side of the state, some sort of tax cut, for example. But the state definition of disability is too narrow and does not include important chronic diseases that really have an impact in the ability of an employee to work full-time or on-site for 8 hours straight. Another important work-life balance measure is counseling and well-being promotion measures. These include medical and psychological or counseling services on-site, subsidized physical activity, for example, with a gym nearby or having your own gym installations on site, office adjustments, for example, the quality of the chairs and the desks, workshops on time management, stress management, and some of the other measures of this category. These are not my big favorites because generally they do not lead to structural change, but nevertheless, of course, they are very welcome. Let's move now to parental leave. This is paid parental leave, which can be maternity and or paternity leave, and adoptive parental leave. It is important here to notice that research shows that too short or too long paid maternity leave have negative associations with gender equality objectives because they reduce female labor market participation. So something in the middle range is best. to avoid the negative impacts on women's working life, since a disproportionate take-up of care duties and career breaks on the side of women will leave them marginalized in the institution. So supporting the employment of mothers and increasing the take-up of leave by fathers are of particular interest for us from a gender equality point of view. Let's see now some examples of policy design for fathers' take-up of parental leave. So take-up of parental leave from fathers has proven to be positively associated with gender equality. This is why Nordic countries that promote the dual earner, dual carer model for families with children. There's a lot of cultural resistance against fathers taking leave for child care responsibilities or any other type of care responsibility. But we can see in this table here, different policies adopted in European Union countries to promote take-up of parental leave by fathers. We can see, for example, here at the bottom in Sweden, we have 90 days of fathers-only parental leave, which is non-transferable. This is an individual entitlement for fathers. The non-transferable part means that is use it or lose it. If the father doesn't take the leave, then the leave goes totally to waste. Research shows that the level of take-up of parental leave by fathers increases if it's given as an individual entitlement, if it's non-transferable, and if it's well paid. If you don't pay the leave, fathers won't take it. It's also important to note that while parental leave policies, maternity and paternity, secures job protection for those employees taking the leave, it does not protect against the negative impact of such breaks on career progression. So this policy in isolation is not enough to tackle the issue, and we will come back to this later. Let's move on now to academic specific measures. We know that academia has some particularities, and we need to tailor our policies to those particularities. Let me give you some examples. The Hanken School of Economics gives automatic extension of temporary contracts of teaching and research personnel if they have been absent due to maternity or paternity leave. Then we have measures regarding tenure clock extension. For example, allowing tenure track faculty a period of time, generally 1 year, that will not be counted as part of their tenure track probatory period. So the time going from assistant professor to professor rank. In case this faculty have taken a parental leave. So that year won't be counted towards the probation period. Scheduling meeting, networking events in a way that they are family and life friendly. Otherwise, it will imply a low participation of women and lots of missed opportunities for career advancement, participation in research projects, and so on. Extra funds for travel offered to employees with dependents, with disabilities, with chronic illnesses, and so forth. Childcare on site offered during conferences or other day-long or evening events. Gender-sensitive recruitment procedures. This means factoring in parental leave and part-time work in the academic age of the applicant. Continuous communication from the side of the university with those employees on leave. And modified duties. Let me give you some example. Since 2012, one of the ways in which the University of Southern Denmark has implemented work-life balance measures and gender equality measures is with two specific practices. One is that while away on parental leave, Researchers are offered continuously academic updates. And two, that when they return from parental leave, the researchers are offered to get a teaching-free period when they were on a leave for 6 months or more. So they can come back, not have any teaching responsibilities, and use the time only to advance their own research.